Hey guys, so in today's video I'm going to be teaching you a variety of ways of peeking or swinging or stuff like that I primarily use. Now there are going to be a couple that I don't necessarily fully cover in this video, and that's because I just don't really use them, and that's okay. Peeking styles is kind of preference. Some are universally good, such as jiggle peeking, and that's going to be the first one that we're talking about. But before we get into the video, guys, if you'd like coaching from me, if you like how I teach, if you find my videos impactful or knowledgeable, then make sure to reach out to me on Discord. The link is down in the description below, and we can schedule a coaching session. So anyways, guys, let's go ahead and jump in. So jiggle peeking, you guys are probably all familiar with what this means. This basically means that you're jiggling around a corner like this. Now, there's a couple of things you can control whenever you jiggle peek, okay? Make sure that for pretty much all of these types of peeking, that you're not super close to the wall. Make sure you're farther away. And make sure that whenever you jiggle peek, you can either peek wide like this, jiggle peek wide, you see? So wide, I mean like I'm peeking this much of an area. Or I can jiggle peek kind of more narrow, so I'm jiggle peeking only like this much area. And if you're jiggle peeking a more narrow angle, then this probably means you're interested in just getting information. So what does that mean? That means you're trying to see if there's anybody here, right? So let's say you're holding this angle, you can go like this. Although this can be wall bang, so be careful. You can kind of go like this, as opposed to going like this, right? And this is more, your intention is more to fight here, which is completely okay. Now, I'm not gonna sit here like this and jiggle peek every single second doing this. You can do that if you think like, oh, they're gonna push mid, but if you don't think they're gonna push mid, you can just hold an angle, right? And we'll talk about holding angles in this video as well. But jiggle peeking is primarily good if you either hear someone, someone's nearby. And again, you can jiggle peek like this to where you're not even really peeking an angle, you see? And the benefit of this is because imagine that you're walking up into a garage, right? And someone's about to peek you. If you're peeking out a little bit more than just sitting right here, then you're gonna have a jump on them because you're gonna be able to see their gun as they're walking up, and they don't hear you whenever you do this, right? I'm not holding shift right now, okay? So whenever you jiggle peek, this is a crucial aspect of jiggle peeking, is make sure that you do not hold shift, okay? Because if you hold shift, you're going to be moving slower, and you see it makes a big difference. I'm not moving as much, but here I'm moving much quicker, and I'm also not making any noise, which is very, very important. And so you can do this whenever you're holding an angle like this because it allows you to see them a little bit ahead of time. So anyways, guys, that's jiggle peeking. It's extremely useful for just taking fights, getting information, and also, just holding angles like this. So I would suggest trying this out and try not to overuse it, right? I had someone DM me asking about a jiggle peek scenario. Don't overuse jiggle peeking. Try to be a little bit more calculated with how you use it. Now, guys, we're going to be talking about one of my other favorites, which is wide swinging. A lot of people, you can also combine this with the pop and swing. Most of you probably know what that means. So a wide swing is where we just kind of come out like this and then shoot. A pop and swing is whenever we go extra far like this to make the enemy purposely whiff and lose their bearings. So let's say there's someone like right here. We know someone's right there. Instead of like jiggle peeking and trying to fight, we would just swing, right? If it's a 1v1 especially, if we know that the best thing to do is to fight them, we would just wide swing. This would be a wide swing, right? Or we could swing from the right. And a pop and swing would be like this, where you swing and then they start shooting you. And at the very end of this, then you shoot them. Because what they're going to do is they're going to like start crouch spraying or something. And that's exactly what you want, because they're not going to expect you to keep moving. They're going to expect you to like stand still as soon as they see you. And this is a trick that actually works extremely well. This is a trick that I do pretty often, especially like if my intuition tells me that it would be a good time to use this type of peek. Again, you don't always want to be wide swinging. You don't always want to be popping swinging stuff. Like, you don't really want to pop and swing out into like 5 people here. It's not really the best thing. But in a 1v1 or like, it's specifically in a 1v1, whenever you need to take a fight, it can be extremely good. So let's say we're retaking and we know that there's someone like right here somewhere. We could just swing like this and then shoot, right? Instead of wide swinging just like this, where they're gonna expect you to be. This works in a lot of scenarios just because people aren't used to seeing this happen. Like, if you see someone swinging here, you're not gonna expect them to run all the way out to like right here before they stop and start shooting you. You're like, oh, I'm gonna place my crosshair over here. You're anticipating that they're gonna only go a little bit, right? Because people want to kill you quickly so that they don't risk dying. But surprisingly, the pop and swing is very good. Wide swing in general is a very useful tactic, but again, it's very situational. You shouldn't be wide swinging everything at the start of a round. Sometimes that's okay. Sometimes you can just stand out in the open. Alright guys, so now I'm going to be talking about something that not a lot of people talk about in terms of peeking, and that's because this isn't necessarily a type of peek. This is called simply just holding an angle, because I believe holding an angle is extremely underutilized, extremely under talked about, and extremely underappreciated, okay? And the reason this is because you're going to hear me talking about different types of peeking. You're going to hear me talking about, do this peek aggressively. You can do this to, peek and check their spawn and stuff like that. Check different for information. And then you're going to go into a game. You're going to start jiggle peeking, and then you're going to get like one tapped. You're going to be like, what do I do, right? And so holding angles is like the alternative to, peeking aggressively, right? Because peeking is inherently semi-aggressive, even if you're doing it kind of like cautiously, like you're peeking narrow. You're still going to want to have a backup, which is going to be holding angles, right? Holding angles, it's very hard to go wrong with holding angles. Now, if you are a duelist, you don't always want to be sitting back here and holding an angle. Make sure the angle that you're holding is semi-realistic. Like, even this right here is called holding an angle. This is an aggressive angle to hold, but this is still holding an angle. And we're not necessarily just peeking everything and pushing, right? We're kind of chilling out. And then there's lines of defense. So the first line of defense might be holding this angle or this angle. But then we can come back here, hold an angle like this, and come back even farther, hold like this. And so the farther back you hold, the more kind of passive you become. So make sure that you're not... This is one of my favorite spots, by the way. That's why I keep coming up here. This is an angle I like to hold quite often. Now, you can hold angles all over the place, and you can practice holding angles in deathmatch. Don't just hold angles for like at random. Try to hold angles that you believe enemies are going to push into. So let's say the enemies are pushing up long. Also, the more unusual the angle, the better. So like an angle kind of like right here might be good, because whenever you're walking up long, you're not really expecting someone to be like right here, and then you can just dismiss away if you're Reyna. You can also cross over to here. Here's another angle. People actually do expect this semi-often, but it does work still. Here's another angle. So again, this is kind of like, this ties into peeking, but it's not necessarily a type of peek. But it's an alternative you guys need to have in your toolbox in order to really kind of master peeking as a whole, right? So now guys, I'm going to be talking very briefly about jump peeking, and I'm going to go actually on attack to kind of emphasize this, because I think I don't really use jump peeking a lot, even though it can be really effective. I think the main use case for me, in my eyes, for jump peeking is to make sure that there's not an op, right? If you get good at jump peeking and there's an op, you can really bait out some shots. So for example, a really easy jump peek that you can do that is a little bit different from how you might see other people do it is you jump in a little U shape. So you jump like this. You don't want to jump too far out, because if you jump too far out like this, you see I'm gonna land out in the open. So make sure you run out, and then you come and jump and you land back behind the wall. So kind of like this. You see I land all the way back behind the wall. And this is really, and also if you jump out too far, you'd still get shot. So try to make it so just your like part of your body's showing. And this is gonna bait any opper over here to shoot, and more than likely probably miss. So again, make sure you're not jumping too far out, because then you will expose too much of your body and likely die. But another way to jump peek is kind of like this. Again, it is gonna be harder to do, but if you do this correctly, you'll just be exposing your part of your left side, and it's going to be very hard for them to hit you. This type of jump peeking is harder, but you can do this for even on defense, right? Like, you see a lot of people in higher ranks jump peeking, and that's because it's an extremely effective method of like just kind of getting information. I kind of suck at doing it on this side, which is very interesting. Just try to, again, the main thing here is try to land behind here. And even if you're not doing it perfectly, there's a good chance you can get some info and still not die, because if someone's shooting you as you're jumping up here for just a split second, it's gonna be pretty impressive, right? You can also make up your own kind of jump peek, but I would highly recommend doing this one for ops. So like mainly if you don't know, if you already know that someone's opping here because you already heard them shoot, then don't jump peek. You can just leave, right? But if you don't know if there's an op here, that's where you can jump peek on attack, right? Now on defense, it's extremely useful to just kind of gain some information and just kind of see if someone's there, if they're gonna shoot you, and then that's gonna tell you. And then after that happens, after you either see them or they start shooting at you, you can just back up, reposition, and maybe hold an angle, right? Because if we know that there's like 3 mid, why would we pop and swing instead of just hold this angle, hold a nice angle that they're not really gonna expect. This is an unexpected angle. We dismiss, right? And that's how we play the game. So you see, you can combine different types of methods, and instead of jump peeking this, you might just kind of jiggle peek this, and then again after you see them, you might take a fight if it's just one because you're a jet or you're Reyna and you have your dash activated or whatever, or you might come back and then hold an angle here, or you might come all the way over there and hold an angle. If you're jet, you might be up here and hold an angle, right? So these are all different types of peeking. There are other types of peeking. I have one more for you guys, and that's all that I'm going to be sharing with you today. But hopefully this kind of opens your mind a little bit to let you know what kind of peeking there is and what kind of peeking you might not be doing, or what kind of peeking you can improve on a little bit, especially the holding angles. But anyways, guys, the last type of peek is, I don't even know what this is called. If there is even a name for this, you guys probably tell me in the comments. This is something that I used to do more often than now. So what you can do here is, it's basically just actually need to bind crouch. Okay, so you bind crouch and you just spray. Because if you look at my shooting error on the right side, if I run and shoot, you see my accuracy is really not accurate at all. But if I crouch, see how accurate this is? And so this is technically a type of peek because we can, you know, I don't know, I can't think of a great example for this, right? Like if there's just someone back here and you know that there is, like, basically the purpose of this type of peek or this method of shooting is to make yourself less predictable, because if you just stand here and spam the box, it's going to make you less accurate. And now, one other thing to note about this type of spray is that you can't really do it from a super long range, obviously, because you're running. But if you are closer, okay, this is very accurate, and the benefit is that you're moving, right? You're moving, and it's going to be harder for them to hit you, even if it's just by a little bit, whenever they try to kill you, because you're moving, you're not static. So hopefully this video is helpful, guys. Let me know if you have any questions down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.